All right, you're live.
Hey everyone. So today we're going to ask that question: do interventions for alcoholism really work? And sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. It really depends on a lot of things. And it's really hard to say. You got to look at a few factors. It really depends on how it's done, what kind of intervention is performed, how it's planned. Hold on one second. Sorry, I just have a little technical issue here. How it's planned, whether professional help is involved, the state of mind of the person that's being intervened with, and the level of denial or like dependence that the person has, and whether they've been approached about this problem before. There's other factors definitely that are involved here, but we're going to get into that. And I'm Terry, talksober.com. That's think that way. That's Marcus, and welcome. So, as I was saying, sometimes interventions are effective and sometimes they're not, and there are a lot of factors involved. And what we're going to talk about today is really the most effective methods of intervention. And whether you're worried about a loved one, or you're worried about yourself, or you're just struggling with sobriety right now for a bit, or maybe you're sober. It's really important to understand the different intervention methods for alcohol use disorder, because the last one I'm going to talk about, although it's pretty difficult for everybody that's involved, it's possibly the most effective one, and we'll get into that in just a little bit. But the first type of intervention is really kind of an emergency intervention, and that's where somebody, maybe they have alcohol is causing a medical problem, or they have a medical problem, or somebody is possibly in danger or something like that because of the person's alcohol use, or whatever the case may be. There's different reasons why somebody may have an emergency intervention, and that's where professional help is absolutely needed, definitely. And sometimes you really don't have a lot of time to plan it or anything like that, and it just has to happen. And that's kind of all I'm really going to talk about that for now. But the intervention that you guys are probably most familiar with are the ones that you've seen on TV, and I think there's actually a show on A&E about it, and maybe it's called Intervention. I forgot it. Anyways, that's probably the type you're talking about, and that's kind of called a confrontational intervention. And that's where, a group, you get the family and the friends or whatever, the people that are involved with the person that's having alcohol issues, and you get them all together, and maybe there's an interventionist, a professional that kind of knows how to run them and can kind of facilitate and deal with things in an objective point of view. And those are the ones that most of us are pretty familiar with, and maybe we've watched the show, and maybe some of you have experienced an intervention, whether you've had it happen or you've been involved with one or something like that. But these interventions, like I said, they involve the family and friends and of the person that's having problems with alcohol, or they're causing problems with the family, or just the general relationship dynamic and all that. And it's due to their alcohol use. And usually the goal of the interventions is just to get the person like into some sort of treatment program or rehab, or really the ultimate goal is to get them to stop drinking, right? And that's what people are generally trying to do with an intervention. And they see that they're having this problem, and a lot of times this person with the alcohol problem doesn't necessarily recognize that they have a problem, or they don't recognize the scope of the problem. And and within these confrontational interventions, there's actually different types of these interventions, and most of them really do have a lot of similarities. But some have the person that they want treatment for can be involved, or maybe they're not involved. Maybe it's just a surprise intervention. All of a sudden, they walk into a room and there's everybody talking to them about it, and that's probably the scariest thing, not just for the person with the alcohol problem, but also for the people that are trying to deal with this intervention, because they don't know how the person's going to react, and it can be a difficult thing for everybody. And that's why, a lot of times the professional help is always recommended. And, these things, they're difficult because you need to organize these things. Well, first of all, you need to plan them. They absolutely have to be planned as far as what people are going to say. You got to get everybody together on the same day, like the family and friends. You got to get the professional involved. That usually costs quite a bit of money. And, you need to find the correct time to do it, the right place to do it. You need to plan exactly what the person's going to say. Like each person is going to say their spiel. And, you need to kind of steer them into not making it a complain session or an attack session on the person. It really has to be supportive and things like that. And also some of the interventions, there's consequences for the person that, like, if they don't, like, go to treatment or something, maybe you're going to take away some privileges that they have or something like that. And sometimes those things are involved, and not all the time. That's not always the case. But it makes planning these interventions and going through with them really difficult. And actually, one of the biggest reasons interventions fail is because of the amount of planning that's involved, and people just realize that, they don't want to go through that effort, especially with this person that maybe, they probably love them, they want them to get better, but at the same time, maybe they just are kind of sick of all their crap, really, and they don't want to deal with it anymore. They just want her to get better, but there's some keys for making these things successful. And really, one of the biggest keys is the planning, and planning all the things I just spoke about, and getting that professional help, and using supportive and constructive communication. That's really key. And then on top of that, having a plan for recovery after the intervention. You can't just say, hey, you need to get sober now, and that's it, and leave it at that. You kind of need to have a plan for them, because they probably don't have a plan for themselves. They're probably stuck. And
Yeah.
and for me, I do have to be honest about this. I tell you, for most of my drinking career, and even when I was having troubles with drinking and it was starting to become evident to other people, I don't think an intervention would have worked, the confrontational type especially. But it may have worked for a short time. Like, I may have sobered up for a little while, but I probably would have started drinking again. And what my answer to the intervention was, I probably, I wouldn't have wanted to go through it again, that's for sure. So I probably would have hidden my drinking better. And, us people with alcohol problems are pretty much professionals at hiding our issues with alcohol and pushing it down and not letting anybody know what's going on. But,
Exactly.
on the other side of the coin, towards the end of my drinking, I was pretty desperate, especially those last couple of years. I did want to stop. I realized I needed to stop. But I had that other side of me that liked the feeling alcohol gave me. So the biggest problem for me was I just I enjoyed that feeling, but I wished I could figure out a way out. So I was really too embarrassed to ask for help, because I didn't want people to know that I couldn't control myself, I guess. And maybe if somebody just intervened at that point, it kind of would have been like getting the Band-Aid ripped off. I would have gone through that humiliation really fast, and I would have realized people were there to help me, because really the loved ones in your life, they do want to see the best for you. And maybe I would have gotten that help back maybe a few years before I finally did get that help. But the confrontational interventions, they don't happen that often, really, because they are a lot of work. They're difficult to deal with. And you guys can share some of your experience there, definitely. We'd love to hear it, and we can talk about that. But You know what I ended up doing, and I think any of you that are sober or have gotten sober have done, is sort of self intervention. And for me, it was the route that I took. But unfortunately, what the problem with this was and is with most people that get themselves sober, or get themselves into a rehab program or whatever the case may be, is they usually have to get to the point of losing almost everything or losing everything before they get the help they need. Because,
Yeah.
like, and you can step in
Yeah,
there.
I think the key is to understand what's really going on and how to get the help you need, and really to have the humility to seek out help, right? Because interventions and stuff like that, I think a lot of it relies on the psychology of the family and the need to say yes,
Yeah.
rather than I really want to get help because of what's going on. Now, I think an intervention can work if the interventionist understands chemical dependency. If they don't, then all bets are off, right? And it seems like when I watch the TV shows about intervention, a lot of times it's on the show and the dramatics of, let's get this guy to rehab at all costs, which is good. I understand the idea there. But I also understand that the success rate of people trying to get sober is dismal. It's like literally nothing. And so if we understand that and we know what's going on, we can be like, okay, I need to step in from a place of chemical dependency and understanding that this person doesn't want to be an alcoholic because they just want to be an alcoholic or an addict. No, they want it because they don't have a better option, and they don't understand that.
Right.
And maybe you're listening and you're like, should I go to rehab? Should I get an intervention? And you don't understand the magnitude of chemical dependency, so it's very difficult. But if you understand, I'm under the influence of a chemical, take the chemical away, I'm a different person. That's not described, because we're relying on this 1900s biblical idea of what an alcoholic degenerate is. And it's like, is that really the case, or are they chemically altered? And I would say they're chemically altered. And it always reminds me of, if you've ever seen the movie The Green Mile. Terry, did you ever see that movie?
Oh yeah, very good.
Sad movie.
Yeah.
Great movie, but sad movie. And in that, there's like this prison guy who heals people. And one of the prison guards has a wife who has a very bad illness, and I think it's a tumor that presses on her brain, and she just lays in bed all day cussing at everything and yelling at everyone. And it's like, okay, so is she just a jerk, or is there something altering the way that she thinks and feels? Or I knew someone years ago who got in an ATV accident, and they were a fine, fun, great person. They got in the ATV accident, and all of a sudden their brain chemistry, everything changed. They are not the same person they were. And for me to go through and say to that person, oh, hey, you know what? Get your brain in order, figure your stuff out, be smart again. People would be like, what is wrong with you? You're a complete jerk. This guy has a mental condition. Now, I do understand that sometimes our condition caused by alcohol, by our choice. Okay, he didn't really choose to fall off his ATV. Shouldn't have been driving it drunk, but he didn't choose it. All right? We choose to drink, and he did choose to drink too. Different story, different time. But we choose to drink, and we are responsible for the actions we do while we drink. Now, with that said, there's also a chemical component where our mind is being warped by alcohol, and we can't see that that's the way it's being warped. And so an intervention can help if someone's able to say, look, I know what's going on in your brain and in your mind. And I know that it's not really you. I know that without alcohol, you don't act, behave, or do the things you do with alcohol. So I understand that it is the alcohol. Okay? Do we have a responsibility? Of course we do. Do we need to pay penance for the things we do? Of course we do. But we need to also understand that it has to do with alcohol. And this was the magic that happened for me. It was the magic that happened for Terry. Once we realized and accepted alcohol is the problem. Okay, like your brain will change. Even if you don't do 12 steps or some program or whatever, your brain will change just by not having alcohol. Okay, will that be enough to make you through life not drinking? I don't know. Some people it is. But some people, we need to understand that that is the biggest component. So if you think you're going to go have an intervention, go and one day drink normally again, you probably won't be able to. And the fact that you want to is proof that alcohol is warping the way that you think. Right? And if we start to understand that chemical dependency is in and of itself the most important thing here, that is what has changed your brain. That is what is going on. And no matter what, that's what the magic happened for me, was saying, I can't have alcohol anymore. I don't want to. I know what it does. And that alone is what happens. It's like we talk about on this channel all the time. You go to the abused person, right? They're in a relationship and they're being abused. And they always go back. But the minute they say the abuse is this person, that is my abuser, it is wrong. They walk out the door, they never look back. Why? Because they've pinpointed the problem. Up until that point, oh, well, maybe I'm just too weak. Maybe if I just did all the things that he or she said to do, then they wouldn't yell. How many times have we done this with alcohol? Maybe if I drank only on weekends. Maybe if I dealt with my problems with my family. Maybe. Alcohol's the abuser. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the problem. You get that off the table, life changes instantly, then you work your way up. And it's so important to realize that, because unfortunately, I believe that the emphasis in our culture is too much on get up by your bootstraps and get the willpower and stop being a degenerate and figure your life out. It ain't got nothing to do with that. Right? You can figure your life out all the time. If you're chemically dependent, you're chemically dependent.
Yeah.
The heroin addict, you look at them, they didn't wake up one day and say, I'd like to live on the street and sell myself. That's what I'd like to do. And I'd like to, find, cigarettes on the ground and have them. No, nobody woke up wanting that. Chemical dependency brought them to that point. Did they have the choice to use the chemical? Yeah, they do. And right now, we all have the choice to say no more. Ever again. Why? It's not worth it. It's not worth the risk. If I could go out there and stop this thing right now, go to rehab. Because when I went to rehab, I was like, the option is no longer being alive or coming here and learning what I can about how to stop drinking. And I'm so grateful that rehab, one, had like this big tough dude who was like, I'm going to kick your butt if you don't listen, right? And also that they taught us about chemical dependency. Now you did have to weed through it. It wasn't obvious because it was, here's 12 steps, here's this. But you had to listen in between the lines to understand, chemical dependency is it. And that's what I took with and ran, because can we have a better life? Sure. But nothing's going to change if you keep drinking.
Yeah, exactly. That's the number one thing I had to do, was take alcohol off the table. And the problem that I had when alcohol suddenly came off the table is those feelings were there. And I didn't have anything to numb them with. I hear that a lot, is I drink because the alcohol helps me numb the feelings of this broken relationship or whatever it is in life that's not going so well. And for me, I just had to deal with it. And so I had to start to develop that way of life, that way of life to just move forward, even through the pain, because it did get better, and it does get better. It's everybody I know that has gotten sober. Yeah, some have had some pretty serious issues in sobriety, but every one of them say that life is much better now. They wouldn't trade their worst day sober for their best day drunk. That's something I hear all the time. And that's because they learned and they realized that alcohol is the factor here. And when they got that off of the table, their mind started to clear up. And yeah, unfortunately, when your mind starts to clear up, you do start to think about all those things that are stressing you out in life. And it can be difficult. But that's what I had to do, and that's what really needs to be done. And for my intervention, I guess, on myself, because I'm the one that nobody made me go to rehab, and nobody told me to go to rehab or anything like that. I realized I had a problem, and I admitted it to people, even though they didn't realize it. I was a very good hider at drinking, and I got the support right away from people. They helped me get into a place and helped me get sober. And even when I started drinking again after rehab and had to do it all over again, I got the support again. And it's tough, but as Mizzle says, it is tough, but you're never going to give up, and that's what you need to do, and approach the person, your wife, with support. Always be there as much as you can. It's hard. It's hard, man, when the person's still using, definitely. But be there when they're ready.
Absolutely.
But yeah.
Cool. Anything else to add, or
Well,
how
just
are we looking?
as far as needing the help, you definitely, like I said, you get to a doctor. They're going to point you in the right direction. The If you're the one that's trying to get sober, or you're trying to get somebody sober, try to get some help in there professionally. If you're trying to help somebody get sober, you can always join the Al-Anon, something like that. It's really important to get some sort of support from some direction, and there's online groups and things like that you don't have to get so involved with. But there's people that have gone through what you're going through. And
I would also say for Missile, congrats on staying sober since 2019. I think that's amazing. I think you said your wife is struggling with drinking. I think it might benefit you to go through our Talk Sober course. One, as a refresher for your sobriety, and two, it's going to show you the inner workings of why her mind is hooked on alcohol the way it is. Because that's what we focus on, is the mental aspect. Like for me, I never went through, I think I did step 4 in rehab, but not really. And I think that I never really went through the steps. Now, I did attain a good life, and I've been sober 9 years next month, or the month after that. And I think for me, looking at it from a mental aspect, I went into it, I'm kind of an intellectual. I love reading books, and I needed to understand concrete how the alcohol was affecting my brain. And that's what Talk Sober is about, is what is it like? And for everyone who's an alcoholic, it's hell. It's not fun. We drink because we have to. And then once we realize we don't anymore, that's a key. But also remember, go to a doctor if you're detoxing, because it can be dangerous.
But yeah, it's a change of perspective, changing the way we look at things. And, it's not just not drinking. If that's all I had to do, that'd be great. I had to do a lot more than that. And that was figuring out how to change my perspective towards life. And that's what Marcus has done too, without going through 12 steps or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. And it was an accident. I wish I could say that I was smart enough to figure it all out, but it was a byproduct of not drinking and having to live life sober. And there's a lot that I've learned doing that. Last year, or I think it was the year before that, my anxiety went away. And I wish I could say there was some magic thing that made it go away. But I think it was just circumstantial dealing with the things I had to deal with, like going to rehab and being taken away by the cops from my house because I was drunk and a threat to myself. That was a notch in my belt of, I survived that. So maybe anxiety at, this event isn't that bad. And then slowly and surely it started to go away. And looking at things different, like understanding anxiety is not real. Understanding my thoughts aren't as important as I thought they were.
Right.
Those little things started to change my life little by little. And that's what it's about. Stop drinking, build a life you don't have to run from, slowly but surely, one day at a time. Be grateful, and you will find a new way of life.
Yeah, absolutely. Grim says, I realize that sitting and stewing and drinking doesn't fix anything, and getting rid of the booze, I can see the path in a future where I could be happy. And that's exactly what just Marcus is just saying. And yeah, sitting and stewing, that was it for me. That's what I did. I sat and I stewed on things and thought about, okay, this is what I'm going to do next. I hate my job. I'm going to go get this job. Did I ever do it? No. I never fixed anything while I was still drinking. Alcohol first had to come off of the table, and that was the key for me. And for some people, the intervention is what's needed. But either way, for me, I had to do it sort of not really on my own, but I had to be the one to start it. And that's the case. Really, is a person's not going to get sober unless they really, really want to, or unless they're forced to. I do know some people that were, you get sober or you go to jail. That was their choice, and they did pick the sober path, and they managed to stay sober. But that was because they really, really realized that they had to, and then because of that, they wanted to. And that's the key, definitely.
Absolutely.
Hello, Andrew.
All right, guys. Well, I think that's about it for today. Good to have you here, everyone. Check out talksober.com. Click the big yellow button if you want to support what we're doing on the channel and help us out. I just had to buy new lights for the channel. As you can tell, I'm sitting here in the dark because we're using all my other lights over there. So, yes, help us out because those lights are not cheap. We like your help here. I do use them for other businesses, though,
Yeah,
too.
congratulations, Marilyn.
Yeah, Marilyn, congratulations on that. Awesome stuff. Cool, guys. Well, thanks for being here. We'll see you next week, and we'll see you over at talksober.com.
Bye-bye, everybody.